The world is holding its breath tonight, gripped by a sense of uncertainty and fear. A single act in the South China Sea has sent a shockwave across the globe, reverberating through governments, markets, and ordinary lives alike. Chinese naval forces have seized the Starlight Trader, a massive cargo ship carrying billions in advanced NVIDIA chips that were destined for the heart of America's tech industry and its most powerful companies. This was no random act. It was a calculated, state-sanctioned move executed with precision and intent. The chips now sit in a Chinese port under heavy armed guard, their fate uncertain, their value growing by the hour. This is more than a trade dispute, it's a flashpoint, a moment that could ignite something far larger. The fragile relationship between the US and China is now at the breaking point, with both sides exchanging sharp words and veiled threats. For months, tensions simmered, a cold war of tariffs, sanctions, and technological rivalry, each side testing the other's resolve. But this act takes the conflict from the boardroom to the high seas, turning economic rivalry into a direct confrontation. It's a physical, undeniable act of aggression, one that cannot be ignored or downplayed. The implications are enormous, touching the global economy, the future of technology, and the delicate balance of power. Washington is scrambling to respond to this unprecedented provocation, holding emergency meetings and consulting allies around the world. The seizure signals that China will no longer play by the established rules of global trade and is willing to challenge the status quo. The US has tried to limit China's access to high-end chips, the brains behind AI, military tech, and the next generation of innovation. But with this move, China has flipped the game board, upending expectations and forcing the world to reconsider what comes next. This is a fight for control over the technology that will define the 21st century. From artificial intelligence to advanced robotics. The world is watching, wondering if the two most powerful nations can pull back from the brink, or if escalation is now inevitable. Or is this the first shot in a conflict that could reshape our world, changing the course of history for generations to come? Here's what we know so far about this rapidly unfolding situation. Early this morning, the Starlight Trader, a massive container ship registered under the Panamanian flag, was making its routine journey from Taiwan to California, carrying a high-value cargo across the Pacific. On board were thousands of NVIDIA's most advanced AI chips, components that are absolutely critical for the operations of major US tech firms, powering everything from data centers to next-generation artificial intelligence systems. Suddenly, 3 Chinese Coast Guard cutters, accompanied by a naval destroyer, intercepted the Starlight Trader in the South China Sea, claiming the need for a customs inspection under new regulations. The crew, vastly outnumbered and unarmed, had little choice but to comply. Chinese personnel boarded the vessel and immediately made their way to the containers holding the valuable chips. The ship was then forcibly escorted to the port of Guangzhou, where the entire cargo was offloaded under the watchful eyes of heavily armed security forces, ensuring no interference. Chinese authorities claim the seizure is part of a sweeping crackdown on illegal technology smuggling, referencing recently enacted national security laws that broaden their enforcement powers. However, international legal experts argue this action is a blatant violation of maritime law, as the ship was traveling through contested, yet internationally recognized, waters at the time of the interception. Western governments are calling the incident state-sponsored piracy, insisting this was an act of aggression rather than legitimate law enforcement. The seized chips are valued at over $5 billion, making this one of the most expensive technology seizures in recent history. But beyond the staggering price tag, the real value lies in their strategic importance. These chips represent a significant leap in global computing power and AI capability. By seizing this shipment, China not only deprives its US rivals of crucial technology, but also gains direct access to hardware it has long sought for its own tech sector. This unexpected windfall gives China's AI and military research programs a massive, potentially game-changing boost, accelerating their progress overnight. The move is being hailed in Beijing as a strategic masterstroke, while in the US it's seen as a devastating blow to national interests and technological leadership. The world is left reeling from the shockwaves of this incident, as governments and markets scramble to assess the fallout and what it means for the future. The balance of technological power has just shifted dramatically, and the global tech landscape may never be the same. This crisis didn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of a decade-long tech Cold War between the US and China. It began with accusations of intellectual property theft and unfair trade practices. The US responded with restrictions on Chinese tech firms and, crucially, export controls on advanced semiconductors. The goal: cut off China's access to the chips powering AI, supercomputing, and modern military tech. China, in turn, launched a massive effort to build its own chip industry, pouring billions into self-sufficiency. But despite the investment, China still lags years behind the US, Taiwan, and South Korea. This chip gap is a major vulnerability for Beijing. Each side sees the other's moves as existential threats, fueling a cycle of escalation. The seizure of the NVIDIA cargo is the most dramatic escalation yet. China is now willing to use military power to achieve its tech ambitions. The stakes have never been higher. Why does this matter so much? Why is the world suddenly so focused on computer chips? Because these chips are the new oil. Just as oil once powered the engines of the global economy, today, semiconductors drive the digital world. Semiconductors are the brains of all modern electronics: phones, cars, computers, and more. Without them, our daily lives would grind to a halt. The chips on the Starlight Trader were NVIDIA GPUs, the engines of artificial intelligence. These aren't just any chips. They're the most advanced, highly sought-after processors on the planet. They power everything from AI models to military systems, from self-driving cars to massive data centers that run the internet. The nation that controls these chips controls the future. It's about economic power, technological dominance, and even national security. China can't make these chips on its own. Manufacturing them requires a global supply chain dominated by the US and its allies. Every step, from design to production, is tightly controlled. US export controls were designed to exploit this dependency, blocking China from accessing the world's most advanced technology. That's why the seizure is so significant. China couldn't buy or build these chips, so it took them. It's a bold move in a high-stakes game. Now China can reverse engineer the technology and power its own AI data centers, hoping to catch up with the West. It's a shortcut in the tech race, but one that comes at enormous geopolitical cost. The world is watching, and tensions are rising. By seizing the chips, China admits its self-sufficiency strategy isn't moving fast enough. The pressure to innovate is immense, and it's willing to risk open conflict to keep pace, escalating the global struggle for technological supremacy. The world's most valuable resource just became a flashpoint. The battle for chips is reshaping alliances and rivalries. The global tech order is at stake. Every nation, every company is now part of this competition. The consequences will be felt everywhere, touching every aspect of our connected world. Washington's reaction was immediate and furious. The White House convened an emergency session. The president is described as apoplectic. This isn't just a trade violation, it's a direct attack on American security. The Secretary of State called it a brazen act of economic piracy and a dangerous escalation. The US is now in emergency talks with allies to coordinate a response. On Capitol Hill, both parties demand crippling sanctions and a stronger military presence in the region. The Pentagon has put naval assets on high alert, signaling the US is ready to protect its interests. The message to China: the US may prefer diplomacy, but the military option is on the table. The world is watching to see how far Washington will go. The stakes are global. The next move could redefine the balance of power. The economic shockwaves are immediate. NVIDIA's stock plummets, dragging down the entire tech sector. The Nasdaq faces its worst day of the year. This event injects a new level of geopolitical risk into global markets. The world's technology supply chain, already fragile, is now in chaos. Car makers, electronics firms, and software companies worldwide depend on these chips. The seizure shatters predictability and raises the specter of state-sponsored hijacking. Insurance costs for shipping through the South China Sea are set to skyrocket, raising prices everywhere. Companies will accelerate moving supply chains out of China, but that's costly and slow. In the short term, shortages and higher prices. In the long term, a fractured global economy, split into US and China-led blocs. Allies are being forced to choose sides. The era of easy globalization may be over. The world is entering uncharted territory. In crisis, words from leaders can calm or inflame. Tonight, rhetoric is escalating. President Biden in a stern Oval Office address. The U.S. will not stand by while our economic lifelines are severed. He promises consequences. Beijing's response is equally defiant. Our actions were lawful and necessary to protect national security. China accuses the U.S. of using tech dominance as a weapon. We will not be bullied, says the Chinese Foreign Ministry. NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, issues a somber warning. These chips are the foundation of our future. For them to become pawns in a geopolitical conflict is a tragedy. The language is no longer diplomatic, it's the language of conflict. Each side sees itself as the victim. Trust is gone, and the risk of miscalculation is rising. The world is on edge. The stakes, not just business, but the future of global order. One wrong move could trigger catastrophe. The world holds its breath. The world waits for America's next move. Options range from diplomatic protests to severe sanctions, even military action. The most likely response, a sweeping technology embargo and sanctions on Chinese banks and shipping firms. The U.S. will push for global condemnation, but China's UN veto limits the impact. A military standoff in the South China Sea is possible, with U.S. ships escorting sensitive cargo. China will likely accelerate its own AI development with the seized chips and may retaliate by restricting exports of critical materials. Both sides are preparing for escalation. The next days are critical. The world is watching to see if this crisis can be contained, or if it will spiral out of control. The future hangs in the balance. This isn't just a distant superpower drama, it will affect you. The seizure of the NVIDIA chips threatens to make everything more expensive, from smartphones to cars. More fundamentally, it's a fight over the kind of world we'll live in. The US and its allies envision open, collaborative technology. China offers state control and surveillance. The outcome will shape the future of the internet, AI ethics, and global power. If nations can seize what they want without consequence, the rule of law collapses. The world becomes more dangerous and unpredictable. This is a turning point. The deep fractures in our world are now exposed. The struggle is for power, resources, and the soul of the digital age. The shockwaves will be felt for years. The future is being written now, and the stakes could not be higher.